Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matt from Matt's Bookshelf, and today we are continuing with my Project Pynchon series. This is the series in which I read all of Thomas Pynchon's work in chronological order from publishing date. So episode 1, I covered V, and now today I am covering his second novel and his shortest novel, The Crying of Lot 49. The Crying of Lot 49 was published in 1966 when Thomas Pynchon was 29 years old, and it was a follow-up to what was actually a critically acclaimed book, V. The novel follows Oedipa Maas, who is a young married woman living a fairly normal life in Northern California, when one day she discovers that she was named the executor of a deceased ex-boyfriend, Pearson Verity, who is a mogul and who operated in and essentially ran the fictional town of San Narciso in Southern California. And so Oedipa travels down to San Narciso, and along the way, while she's exploring the city, she keeps discovering these post-muted horn symbols all around the city wherever she goes. And this brings her down this long and crazy journey involving a conspiracy between rival postal services that's centuries old, a black market business where mafia members sell the old bones of World War II soldiers, American soldiers who fought in Italy during the Second World War, and also a potential underground conspiracy cult. And throughout the novel, Oedipa struggles with her sanity in this crazy world, in this crazy environment that is both somehow hopelessly bleak and potentially way more deep than it appears at face value. She starts to lose herself, especially when dealing with the crazy people she runs into in San Narciso. And the novel essentially tracks her downward spiral as she tries to uncover what could be a conspiracy theory or what could just be nothing at all. So let's get this out of the way first. I absolutely love The Crying of Lot 49. I was a little hesitant going into it because if you watch my V video, you'd understand that I was not a particularly big fan of V, and reading that book sort of made me nervous as to whether or not I continue with this Thomas Pynchon series. But with The Crying of Lot 49, I think I really got out of Thomas Pynchon what his fans love about his work. I got the depth commentary on American society, the crazy characters, the insane plots, and the overall paranoia that just plagues every sentence of prose while also being wickedly funny at the same time. This book, even though it's 300 pages less than V, I just feel like it did so much more with so much less. Whereas I found V to be vague for the sake of being vague to try to disguise what is ultimately a fairly simplistic plot and character growth. The Crying of Lot 49 is incredibly complex, and it uses its short length very well, and seemingly every page has something important to say about the plot or about the characters. And it's the character growth here, especially comparing Oedipa Maas to the main character of V, whose name, Benny Profane. There's just no comparison to me. Oedipa is an amazing character. She is quick-witted, but also very vulnerable, and you feel bad for her in this situation, whether or not this conspiracy that she's uncovering is real or just part of her downward spiral of her insanity. She's very relatable, and you feel bad for her, and yet when she gets those moments of victory or perceived victory, you're rooting for her the whole way, especially in dealing with a setting of San Narciso that can be just so oppressive, both in its craziness and in its mundanity. In V, I initially praised how the characters of Benny Profane and Rachel Hourglass were set up with these really interesting character descriptions that potentially alluded to character growth later on in the novel I never felt like was fulfilled. The Crying of Lot 49 starts the same way, with a really excellent introduction to Oedipa, which comes in a flashback scene where she's with Pearson Verity, and she's looking at a painting by Mexican painter Remedios Varo, and I'll read that section as followed. She had looked down at her feet and known then, because of the painting, that what she stood on had only been woven together a couple thousand miles away in her own tower, was only by accident known as Mexico, and so Pierce had taken her away from nothing. There'd been no escape. What did she so desire escape from, such a captive maiden, having plenty of time to think, soon realizes that her tower, its height and architecture, are like her ego, only incidental. That what really keeps her where she is magic, anonymous and malignant, visited on her from outside and for no reason at all, having no apparatus except gut fear and female cunning to examine her formless magic, to understand how it works, how it measures its field strength, count its lines of force. She may fall back on superstition, or take up a useful hobby like embroidery, or go mad or marry a disc jockey. If the tower is everywhere, and the night of deliverance no proof against its magic, what else? And so you immediately get the sense that Oedipa feels trapped. She had this really luxuriant life with Pierce and Verarity, and however has now married a disc jockey named Mucho Mas, who is also insane, maybe a pedophile as well. And you get this feeling of unfulfillment with her character, longing for adventure. But whereas I felt like Benny and Rachel's character growth went basically nowhere in V, I think that Oedipa's character arc here is magnificent in The Crying of Lot 49, and it only gets better as the novel goes along, especially when she arrives at San Narciso. And to be quite frank, San Narciso is probably one of the most well-realized settings I've ever read in a book. Pynchon's ability to world build here, while also not world building in like the fantasy lore sense, is really commendable. San Narciso feels like a living, breathing city, even though it's fictional. You feel the oppressiveness. He somehow combines both mystery and mundanity in such a brilliant way where you could read into the city in two totally different ways. Yes, there's probably underground conspiracy going on at San Narciso, or no, this world is just as oppressive and owned by capitalist ventures as it appears. There is no magic here, and Oedipus Mass is completely imagining what's going on. You can see it in both ways, and the way he's able to take these contrasting thoughts and make one clear and grounded setting is really commendable, especially in how Oedipa reacts to both the architecture, the symbols, and the people in the city. One of the best scenes in the novel comes when Oedipa is at one of her lowest lows, when she feels like she can't distinguish what's real and what's not. She just had a conversation with her psychiatrist, who was a Nazi doctor working at a concentration camp, who goes insane, and she has to talk him out of murdering people within his office. And so she's at this really low point in her life, and just her walking around the city and Pynchon describing what she sees and who she interacts with is probably the highlight of the book. And although I can't read the whole section because it goes on for a while, I'll read one of my favorite sections right now. Last night, she might have wondered what undergrounds, apart from the couple she knew of, communicated by waste system. By sunrise, she could legitimately ask what undergrounds didn't. If miracles were, as Jesus Arrabal had postulated years ago on the beach of Mazatlan, intrusions into this world from another, a kiss of cosmic pool balls, then so must be each of the night's post horns. For here, where God knew how many citizens deliberately choosing not to communicate by U.S. mail, it was not an act of treason, nor possibly even of defiance, but it was calculated withdrawal from the life of the Republic, from its machinery. Whatever else was being denied them out of hate, indifference to the power of their vote, loopholes, simple ignorance, this withdrawal was their own, unpublicized, private. Since they could not have withdrawn into a vacuum, could they? There had to exist the separate, silent, unsuspected world. And so as the novel progresses, Oedipa becomes more and more convinced that this Trastero underground postal service cult, underground society, is real, and that the post-horn symbol is really the waste symbol that they use to communicate and to prove that they're still alive. But however, when she interacts with people from around San Narciso, they all have different explanations for the waste symbol. One person said it's like the symbol for a gay club. There's this right-wing conspiracy theorist who has a different opinion of what it means. And so it both somehow captures like how people can interpret different symbols in different ways. It completely does not shed any light on whether or not Trastero is real or not. Well, it was real, or whether it's still functioning or not, whether this underground society still exists. But overall, every element of this book just seems to hammer home the theme of what America is like in this generation, where it's been taken over by capitalist ventures, where moguls like Pierce and Verarity rule everything, and places like San Narciso just seem so hopelessly bleak. There's so many scenes where Oedipa is looking out the horizon and is just oppressed by smog. And you can't blame her for wanting to believe that there is some fantasy in the world, that there is still some like romantic movement going on, when in fact there's just way too much evidence of the contrary. And this book culminates in what is a fantastic final scene. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you already know this is going to be spoilers, but this book basically ends with Oedipa coming up with this condition where she goes to the auction, which is the Crying of Lot 49, where Pierce's stamps will be put on auction to be sold. But the stamps have the post-horn symbol on them, and so her assumption is that whoever buys the stamps is probably a member of the secret cult. And so she creates this condition where when she goes to the auction, if no one buys the stamps, that means the whole world is as boring and as hopeless and as bleak as it appears. But if someone does buy the post-horn symbol stamps, that means there is this underground society and there is still mystery to this world. And this arbitrary condition that she creates just hammers home the whole theme of the novel with its overwhelming paranoia, with its emphasis on subjectivity. The condition she makes is completely arbitrary and it makes no sense, but at the same time, it makes sense to her. And it just shows how desperate she is to find something more to this world than how it appears at face value. Behind the hieroglyphic streets, there would either be transcendent meaning or only the earth. In the songs Miles, Dean, Serge, and Leonard sang was either some fraction of the street's numinous beauty, as Mucho now believed, or only a power spectrum. Tremaine, the swastika salesman's reprieve from the Holocaust, was either an injustice or the absence of a wind. The bones of the GIs at the bottom of Lake Inverarity were there either for a reason that mattered to the world or for skin divers and cigarette smokers, ones and zeros. And this is essentially where the novel ends. We do not know who decides to put money on the stamps. And initially I was disappointed with this ending. But as time has gone on, and I've really let it stew, I think it is the perfect place to end the novel. Oedipa's condition that she sets is completely nonsensical when you really think about it. It doesn't make any sense as to why she would assume that if someone buys the stamps, there's a larger conspiracy, or if no one buys the stamps, then it's probably nothing. It was, and then this whole plight she goes on was for nothing. But it just goes to tap into the insanity of the character. Potential insanity or potential clarity that no one else can see. Because in the novel, she is probably the most sane person that is encountered. But also, the characters here are also distinct. And that's another thing I really struggled with was finding distinction between the characters, finding satisfying character growth in the characters. It doesn't necessarily be positive character growth, because Oedipa certainly doesn't go through positive character growth in this novel, but just something. And I love how there's no clarity by the end of the novel. You can make up your ending. Does Oedipa go insane? Is she already insane? Is there an underground conspiracy? Is there not? Who knows? And ultimately, Thomas Pynchon doesn't know. You feel like he's struggling with the same issues that Oedipa is struggling with. He lived in California at the time. He also lived in New York. Was he looking at these cities and seeing them being taken over by giant corporations and seeing the smog in the air? Was he wondering the same things? Is this just the degradation of American society? And the answer, at least at face value, is a yes. And also, the name Oedipa itself, obviously, is related to Oedipus Rex, in which Oedipus Rex in the story, Oedipus King, in which Oedipus Rex solves the riddle of the Sphinx to find out who murdered the king of Creon. I'm sorry, it's been a long time since I read the play, but in his quest to find knowledge, he ultimately finds the worst possible knowledge and would have been better off if he had just remained ignorant. And so Oedipa is left in a similar situation where she's trying to find truth, but you have to wonder that when she finds the answer, is it going to be something that she wants? Considering who her name draws parallels to, I would assume no, and that ultimately she will not find out that there is a grander conspiracy. But that's just me assuming. I don't know. That's the novel cuts off before you get a satisfying answer, and ultimately I'm okay with that. And so those are my thoughts on The Crying of Lot 49, and I hope you liked the video a lot. I want to thank everyone who watched my video, because I was very critical of Pynchon, but the fans of Pynchon who commented were very understanding and giving me their thoughts on the book and on Pynchon in a respectful manner, so to that I say thank you. I think we had a really great conversation through that way, and I hope that you liked this video, because I was much higher on Pynchon this time around. But what comes next is Gravity's Rainbow. That is the next novel chronologically in Pynchon's publishing order. I will tentatively start it, because I work at a public school, so I have Christmas break. So I will tentatively start the novel around that time. I don't know how long it'll take me to read it. I might provide updates on my Instagram or on my YouTube channel as well as to how I'm doing with it. But don't expect me to start reading the book until mid to late December. So if you want to read along, that is when around all the time I'll be reading it. And then, of course, I have to make a video on it as well. And, of course, I have to finish the novel, which I don't know if I'll be able to do. So Tentatively, Gravity's Rainbow is next. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in my next episode of Project Pynchon. Thank you and goodbye.